Well, good evening, everyone. This is a rare Thursday night appearance for me. So I'm usually here on Wednesday nights doing presentations or other places. So thanks, Dan, for having me this evening. I'm going to be talking about successful operating tools for assessing the performance of your station. And this really applies to almost all phases of amateur radio, what I'm going to be talking about tonight. My contact information, k8zt@awrl.net. My website, k8zt.com. As usual, my presentation tonight is full of resources that you might want to click on. So this is a link that'll get you to this presentation, or you can view the downloaded PDF that'll be uploaded to Dan's website, the RATPAC Dropbox. Question is, am I getting out? Can you hear me? Well, let's talk about some ways that you can assess your station's effectiveness, especially if you're calling CQ a lot and no one's coming back to you, or you're answering other people and they're not coming back to you. It can sometimes be very frustrating. Where's the problem at? So let's look at what components there are in successfully operating and making a two-way contact in amateur radio. There's really four things we can break it down to. There's your station. That includes both your radio, your feed line, your antennas, and any accessories associated with that, antenna tuners, microphones, keyers, etc. The second item is your technique. The third item is propagation, the one we have the least control over, although we can always switch bands, and we'll talk a little bit about that. And then the fourth one is the receiving station or stations on the other side of the conversation, which we have very little control over. So let's look at some of the things we can control and some of the things we can test and check out. So at your station, some of the things you can do are check the status of the operation. For example, I have a watt meter in line, so every time I transmit, I can see the little meter bounce up and down. I know there's one on the radio, but it might not be set on that mode, so I might not see the little power meter bouncing up and down. That little reassuring power meter shows me that I'm transmitting and I have the right switch set on the antenna selector. You could use a field strength meter to get a general idea that the signals are getting out, but that won't do a whole lot for testing things. An antenna analyzer might be very helpful if you're having problems with your antenna and or your feed line, or if you're just putting up a new antenna and you need to be tuning it. That's another thing that you can use your antenna analyzer for. And then there's a button on most radios, something along the lines of monitor or something of that nature, that lets you actually hear your signal in your headphones. Of course, it's very important to hear the side tone when you're sending CW, but you can also monitor, have that monitor setting on so you can hear whether you're transmitting an FT8 or whether you're transmitting with your voice. So it might be something you want to check periodically. So what I have is some links. Anytime you see this type of italicized font, that means that there is a link. So if you click on any of these, it'll go out to that resource. So I have some information here on using power or watt meters and SWR meters. And I have a presentation here on doing that. One on using cross needle meters, those that have two meters that move back and forth to show you SWR and power out at the same time. Another article on basics of using the SWR meter and an MFJ antenna analyzer, and that's a YouTube video. And information on external variable VSWRs, SWR meters, why buy one, and how to choose a watt meter. So these are all resources that I'll let you peruse on your own. There will be homework out there tonight. Some of the different types of antenna analyzers, the one that's been around for quite a while is the MFJ series, like the 259, which I have in my shack, and some other models. There's newer models out there, but basically very similar. There's two knobs. You adjust them. You see both an SWR reading and a impedance reading in ohms, and display of frequency in SWR and things of that nature on these type of meters. There's other ones available from other companies, such as Rig Expert has a variety of models out there. And when you're looking at these, you can spend anywhere from the low 100s up into the high 500 or 600. So you can spend a lot of money or a little bit of money. One of the things that's rather inexpensive out there is something called a nano VNA. It's not quite the same animal. It does a little bit different things than these antenna analyzers, but it can be used for a lot of the same purposes, and actually some additional purposes the antenna analyzers don't do very well. So that's something else you might want to look at, and we're going to be having a program on using nano VNAs coming up in the future for RATPAC. One thing I just want to mention is check your coax loss with a power meter and a dummy load before you even start doing any of these other measurements to make sure that you have continuity and that there's not something wrong with your coax. A whole bunch of articles and YouTubes and other things on antenna analyzers, one from Kilo 8 Zero Oscar Golf, Dave Kessler. It's his episode 1, so it was something he thought very important on antenna analyzers. Thing on using nano VNAs. Another one on using nano VNAs, the Sweep Measure Antenna System SWR, using the MFJ Antenna Analyzer Basics, and tuning HF antennas with the Rig Expert AA55 Antenna Analyzer. So these are going to be all available for you to peruse on your own. If you don't believe me, I'll just click on one to demonstrate that yes, these do work. And yes, you still get the same ads on YouTube, unfortunately, but hopefully this one will end quickly. Oh, we get a second one. So this is Dave Kessler, and he does a lot of very good YouTubes, and this one is on antenna analyzers. So the next thing we can try out for assessing our signal is finding another ham to help us on the other end, so they can tell us how our signal is. And I suggest you find someone nearby so propagation is removed from the issues. And if you do that, then you don't have to worry about the propagation aspect of things. There's some other places you can find people to make contacts with. There's a lot of different nets on both HF, VHF, UHF, etc. So there's people that you can make contact with. You can also make contacts in contests. Lots of opportunities to make QSOs, but you won't get any valid signal reports, and there's not going to be time to discuss your signal quality. So it's a way just to see whether you're making contact or not, but not much beyond that. You can call CQ, but there's always the variable there that maybe just no one was interested in talking with you. Your signal was great and people were hearing you all over the world and you were pegging their needles, but they just weren't interested in chatting with you. So what we need to do is, why would we want to have someone over the air feedback? Well, it's a great way to adjust the settings of our radio. On single sideband, it lets us adjust our mic for our voice, and you need to adjust your mic. If you have more than one microphone you use with your radio, you may have to make multiple adjustments to get each mic working properly. Things you might want to set are mic gain, compression, and some radios have other audio settings. Some of them have basically graphic equalizers, so you can set the different ranges of frequency of your voice for best clarity, punchiness, etc., whatever qualities you're looking for. And one of the best ways to do that is get on the radio with someone close by so they can hear you well and do that. I have an article here on reducing splatter from the On All Bands blog. If you've never looked at that before, it's from DX Engineering. I happen to write periodically for that blog, so it's called On All Bands. I didn't write this particular article, though. And here's another resource on clean, punchy, competitive contest audio without splatter. On CW, when you're doing this on-air evaluation, make sure your CW node is clean with no clicks. If your rig has a rise time setting for CW, make sure it is set no faster than 6 milliseconds. Setting it lower will probably introduce key clicks on your signal. You might also want to check to make sure you're not dropping elements when you're sending, whether you're cutting off the first dit or the last dit. Sometimes this is caused by poor keyers. Sometimes it's also caused by excessive switchover time from receive to transmit, especially if you're keying an amplifier. Make sure that your settings are proper. And also back on voice, if you're using Vox, make sure you use that to make sure that the Vox is set properly so that you're not triggering it too soon, but you're also not failing to trigger it when you want to. So these are all things that you can do very easily with the help of a local ham on air. Now sometimes we can't find someone or we want to stretch out further. So what I'm going to talk about now are on-air and online methods that are self-service. In other words, we don't need another ham to be standing by to listen to us because there's a lot of things we can do without that. The first one is beacons. Now, beacons are only useful for evaluating our receive capability because we're not going to be able to get our signal back from the beacon, but we can listen for the beacon, and that'll tell us whether we're able to receive it, whether our antenna is working properly, etc., etc. Now, the reverse beacon network is a different type of beacon network where we actually transmit and our signal is picked up by the beacons and the information is sent back to us electronically, and I'll talk about that. You can also use FT8 and FT4 with the PSK Reporter tool website to get information on your signal. Even if you're not planning on operating FT8 and FT4, you can test your system that way. WhisperNet is another way, low power transmissions to test signals. Other thing you can do is look for your spotting nets, see whether you're being spotted in contest or in different times you're operating. And then I want to talk about online tunable SDRs. So it's basically like having a ham at the other end, but in this case, you just have a radio there and you're going to do the listening on your own to evaluate your signal. So let's jump into each of these. The first one are beacons, and probably the most common one most people think of is the NCDXF IARU International Beacon Project. And it's basically rotating transmissions from 18 stations around the world on 5 bands, 20, 17, 15, 12, and 10 meters. And each station cycles through each of these different frequencies. Now, it's being replaced by other methods such as the reverse beacon network, but one of the things about this is it's always available. So you can assess propagation to these areas whether you can hear these stations or not by using the international beacons. And here's where some of the beacons are located and their call signs around the world. This is a part of the tools for when you go to the site. They let you get information from the website. So again, when you click on this link, it'll take you out to the website and you can go to the beacons. You can find out where they're located. You can also use these tools for listening, and one of the main ones you're going to want to use is the transmission schedule. This basically tells you which station is transmitting currently on which band. So right now, on 20 meters, we now have a ZS6. It just switched over. We have the 4S is now on 17. The station with the VR2 is now on 15, and so forth. And every 15 seconds, they will switch. So they're sending in CW, and we listen for them on the frequency of 14.1 or 18.110. We need to be able to copy the call sign. But even if you're not good at copying CW, you know what station is transmitting on this frequency. So all you need to do is tune to that frequency and see if you're hearing CW on that frequency. Now, this is also a reminder, if you are a CW operator, don't transmit on these frequencies. Avoid these frequencies because people are depending on using the beacons around the world. So I suggest you don't use these particular frequencies. So this tells you what beacons are currently transmitting and what frequencies are on. As you notice, the ZS6 just went silent. It's done with its cycle now, and it started on the LU4. Is now on 20 and it'll work its way through the bands, and now it just switched again, and so forth. So we could tune those in and listen to those international beacons. Any questions about the International Beacon Network?
I don't hear anything. I don't see anything.
Okay. Well, please feel free to either put messages in the chat or let me know if you have any questions. So let's talk now about the reverse beacon network. This is a little bit different type of beacon network. It's for CW and radio only. There's no way to use it with phone. Because of the way it works, and you'll see that in a few moments here, at least yet, maybe in the future, but not right now. Instead of beacons actively transmitting signals, the reverse beacon is a network of stations listening on all bands, and reporting the stations they hear, when they hear the station, and how well the station's being heard, and they'll give the signal strength in dBs. So it's even more accurate than someone giving you a 5.9 or 5.7 with an uncalibrated S meter. This gives you an actually dB reading. You can read this very interesting article, The Short History of Reverse Beacon Networks, on the Reverse Beacon Network site with tiny little print. I'll leave that for you to do later. So what components are there in the Reverse Beacon Network? Well, first of all, there's banks of software-defined receivers and antennas around the world at various locations, and people choose to put these up on their own and sponsor these receivers. Each of these stations then uses a piece of software called CW Skimmer. This software is a multi-stream CW decoding software, and it can decode multiple stations at the same time. And then aggregator software is used to receive spots from these listening stations around the world. They're sent via telnet back to a server, and then a web internet aggregation data display site, which is the reverse beacon network site, shows the data from all these different stations. Now, in addition to being in the reverse beacon network, stations have their own option of setting up just their own receiver and listening, but the real power of this whole thing comes from aggregating all the listeners around the world. So when we go to the site, we're going to see that we're going to go to the DX spots portion of the site. And when we get there, you're going to see there's something called spot search. And spot search lets you choose what call sign you want to look for, but it also lets you choose one of two things, either DX or DE. And what the difference is the DX is the station being spotted. So that's the station that's being heard. The DE is the station that is hearing the station. So in other words, it's the reverse beacon network receiving station. So let's look at an example here. Here's the example of the DX. I put my call sign as the DX in. I transmitted, and all these stations heard me on these different times I transmit. I did actually a couple different transmissions here, one on 15 meters. It also tells you what the approximate sending speed is. Now, I did not change my keyer speed during this whole time, so there was some variation in the way the signals were being received as far as what they judge my keying speed as the time. Now, in this other option, what I did instead is I put in K3LR because I know he has a listening station for the reverse beacon network, and he's about 50 miles east of me in western Pennsylvania. So these are the stations that K3LR was hearing. So even if I'm not transmitting on the reverse beacon network, and even if I don't use CW at all, I can simply go in and use the DE option to hear what a station close to me is hearing. And that'll give me an idea of what DX is out there that I might be able to work. So one of the neat things about the reverse beacon network is getting your information spotted by another station. Well, how does the station know to spot the information on the reverse beacon network? It listens for a key factor what you send. It listens for CQ or test. So for example, CQ, DE, K8ZT would trigger the reverse beacon network to gather up my information and send it back to the aggregator site. I can also use test, which I suggest you do so that people don't answer your CQ. But if it's during a contest, test may even get them to answer you. So send everything at the same consistent speed as possible. Use proper spacing. Consider sending via your rig's CW memory to get computer-generated, machine-generated code, or use a keyboard or something like that. If you send with a stray key, just make sure you're sending good code. Now, in addition to sending CQ, you can also use any of these other triggers. CQ triggers it, test triggers it, QRZ will also trigger it. If you send FD, which is used for field data, it'll trigger it. SS for sweepstakes, it'll trigger it. North America, NA will trigger it, and UP will trigger it. Well, why would you want to be triggered on UP? Well, a lot of DX stations are calling UP the whole time and not stopping to say QRZ. They'll just finish one contact and say UP to get the next station. So these are all things that will trigger the reverse beacon network, and you can try it out on your own. So what I did here is I decided to run an A/B test with my two antennas that I have. I'm running 5 watts in the shack here. The first test was of the 3-element Yagi at 50 foot with the beam directed at 270 degrees. And I transmitted on 14.34.6, and you see that I was picked up by all of these stations, and actually some more that I cut off the bottom of this. And the signal strength that they heard me at was different: 9 dB, 12 dB, 6 dB, 13 dB, 4 dB, 22, and the speed was pretty consistent. So what I did then is I changed frequency just very slightly so all the beacons would hear me again and assume it was a new signal, and I switched over to my 43-foot vertical. I repeated the same thing. Of course, not as many people heard me on the vertical as they did on the beam because the 43-foot vertical is not very good on 20 meters. But I did have some of the same stations come back to me, and I could then compare them. So the ZF1, I was much stronger on the beam, even though I wasn't beaming towards him. But the TI-7, noticed that I was much stronger on the vertical because my beam was at 45 degrees to him, and he was not receiving me very well. Some stations only heard me on one antenna, and there was some difference. So this is one way that you can use the reverse beacon network very simply to test different antennas, different radio setups, and check them out and get a real accurate A versus B reply on how well your signal is getting out. You can also check multiple bands to see how you're getting out. When I did this, it was back on March 3rd, and it was in a 6-minute time frame. I started at 10 meters, 12 meters, 15 meters, 17, 20, 40. I forgot to do 60 meters, then 80 meters and 160. And all these bands were open. Someone in the world was hearing me on every one of these. Different signal strengths, but I was being heard at different places by all these different stations. Now, the other thing you can do with the reverse beacon network is you can go to the DX spots again, but you can use the spot analysis tool, and you can compare multiple stations to see how well they're being heard at different locations around the world. This is for the 160 contest back in, when was this? This was back in January. And 3 stations, K3LR, who's east of me, K1LT, who's southwest of me, and N1UR, which is further away from me. And what I did is I set the DE for a station in Cincinnati area. And this is how each of the stations compared strength-wise in this. So again, when you click on the reverse beacon network, let's just go out there real quick so you see what it looks like. I'm going up to the DX spot section, and then I'm going down to spot search. If I put my call sign in, I haven't transmitted in a while, so let's see if last time someone heard me. There's no spots. I haven't been I've been busy with a little project outside here. But let's go ahead and look and see who K3LR is hearing today. Okay, why is it taking so long to load here? I must have put
There's a question in the chat, Anthony, if you want to take a look at it.
Yes. It's dB and I don't know the answer on that. I don't know the answer to the question. The question in the chat is the dB a minus dB or a positive dB in relation to what? I think it's a positive dB, and I think it's in relationship to the noise floor of the station. So I think it's dB above the local noise, but I'm not positive on that. Does anyone know the answer to that? Let's try this one more time here. I'm not sure why I didn't find anything.
We need to donate.
No, you don't have to donate, but it's not. Let's just try something else a little different here. Let's try a different browser real quickly. Okay, well, we won't worry about that right now then. You can also use the program ViewProp along with the RBN to give you map displays of the information from the various sites out there. And there's a video here that you can watch on using ViewProp with DX Atlas. Some more information on the reverse beacon network, using the reverse beacon network, an article from Tim Duffy, K3LR, on CW skimmer and reverse beacon network, another couple videos from Dave Kassler, and a quick walkthrough for RBN, and an article from N6TV on CW and the RIDI skimmer and the RBN, and this was presented at Contest University in 2017. You can also use the reverse beacon network if you operate POTA or SOTA. If you go to the POTA site or the SOTA site ahead of time and schedule your activity on either of these sites, it will pick up information from the reverse beacon network and then post that on the POTA site and the SOTA site when it hears you. So it's a great way to have that spotting information automatically come out. And there's an article here from the QRP.com blog about doing this, and you can go out to the link. By the way, if you operate QRP, this is a great blog. He does an entry almost every day on the QRP.com site, and it's Tom Witherspoon who does it. One last thing about the reverse beacon network, there's some people that have set up other software that interfaces with it. This particular piece of software does a filtering for reverse beacon network spots of various people that belong to CW clubs, and it's CW clubs from all around the world that are included in that. That link is not clicking there, so click on this link. And you can choose which clubs you want to hear spots from. You can have them all or just one. So if you want CW op spots to come in, you can choose this and it'll show you those. So that's a very interesting tool that they set up in conjunction with the reverse beacon network. Now let's talk about FT8 and the PSK Reporter website. The PSK Reporter website takes, again, something very similar. It takes everyone who's using WSJTX who's chosen to mark one little setting. And let me show you that setting real quick in my WSJTX. If you go into File and Settings, under Reporting tab, there's a little button here that says Enable PSK Reporter Spotting. If you have that checked and you leave your radio on and WSJTX running, it'll constantly send all the spots for all the stations you decode back to the PSK Reporter so that other people can see where they're being heard. When you go out to PSK Reporter then and look at your signals, it'll show you where you're being heard around the world from everyone who has that PSK Reporter feature turned on, and it'll give you a signal strength and the time. So 4 hours ago, I was minus 24 in Canary Islands, minus 13 down here in Brazil. 9 hours ago on 17 meters, I was in Belarus at minus 17 dB. So again, you can see the information. Now, this doesn't mean that the station made contact with you. That simply means that they decoded you. There might not even be someone sitting at the station. It just might be decoding you. And one day, 2 Marches ago, I watched in Antarctica while a station down here at DP0 was copying me at minus 6 on 160 for about 20 minutes. But unfortunately, there must have not been anyone operating at the station then, so I never got a reply. But you can use PSK Reporter to judge the information. If you don't use it, I've written an article here on using PSK Reporter as a website propagation tool. If you use it, and even if you don't use it, how to use the tool to get ideas of propagation around the world using this tool. So again, that link is available in here. This article is on the link. Weak Signal Propagation Reporter Network, also called WhisperNet, is a protocol designed for probing potential propagation paths with low power transmissions. Normal transmissions carry a station's call sign, Maidenhead grid locator, and transmitter power in dBs, and then the information is reported out on a map structure. Very similar to what PSK Reporter does. The WhisperNet software is part of the WSJTX suite, and the program can decode signals with signal to noise ratios as low as minus 20 dB. And Stations with internet access automatically upload their information to the central database, very similar to what PSK Reporter does and Reverse Beacon Network does. I'm going to stop there and see if there's any other questions about either Reverse Beacon Network or PSK or Whisper.
I don't see anything in chat. I don't see
Okay,
in the other, so carry
very
on.
good. Okay, so let's talk about online tunable SDRs, online tunable software defined radios. This is actually my grandson Aaron. I'm sorry, Holden. My son is Aaron, and he has this software installed on his phone, and he's using it to receive some single sideband signals on his phone. So these are tunable software defined radios that have an internet connection to them, and they're set up so that anyone that comes into the station via the internet can tune the radio for signals that they want to hear. And I have put together a whole slideshow presentation on using it, all the different uses for it, how it works, etc. And there's also video recording of me presenting that. But the thing I want to focus on more is this little short handout. And this is what I use when I'm working with students in schools. Quite often I go in and do a whole day on radio, and we do a whole class of 5th or 6th graders, so we have a bunch of kids. And to be able to work with them individually, I need to be able to have some tasks that I can start them on and they can work on without my direct intervention. And this has worked out very well because most of the students have Chromebooks or computers in their classroom, and they can set them up. So I put together this little short guide talking about what SDRs are. And then I have two main sites for them to go to, WebSDR and Kiwi SDWR. We'll go to the WebSDR first here and show you what's out there. It's about 125, 150 stations around the world. Some of them are on multi-band, some are on single bands, some have a variety of different antennas. You can see what the antenna settings are. Let's go out to this one in the Netherlands and use it. Now, I'm going to turn up my sound here in a moment, so you're going to be hearing the background of the station. But before I do that, I just want to show you there's a bunch of different settings we can do here with this. And let's go ahead and turn up the sound. So the first thing I'm going to do is go down a little bit lower in frequency because it's nighttime there. I'm going to zoom in a little bit. Well, there's PSK, there's FT8. Let's go down to 80 meters. So you can see that we can tune it in. We can go to another one here real quick. Go to this one, Northern Idaho. Let's see what's going on with this one. Well, we got to choose which one we want. Let's choose this one. And it looks like we're on 40. We get on the CW portion of the band. We could change our filter settings and everything. So there's a bunch of these out there. You can pick the one you want, and that'll let you also see how well you're being heard at a different location. As you notice, they're around the world. Now the Kiwi radios are very similar. They have a little different interface to them, and there's a little bit different way you access them. You go in and you can do a search for a state that you want to see. Let's do Idaho. So there's 2 of them in Idaho, and we could go to that one. Now sometimes these will be busy if another station is using it, someone else is using it. And that's right on WWV. Let's set this to the right mode. Now I'm using my mouse, and I'm also using my arrow key to move. So the rest of the sheet, and this again is the link to get to the sheet, has information on how the interfaces work, has some additional sites that have SDRs. I also have one here that has just commercial stations, so that the kids enjoy doing that, tuning stations around the world with Radio Garden. I have an article here on shortwave listening, some frequency charts, DX clusters, so they can get an idea of where stations are at. And then I have a chart on the amateur bands telling them what to set the filters to, what the frequencies are, and what the best time of day to use the band, and some notes on each one. But you can use these for a wide variety of ways to assess your signal or to listen to HF signals from around the world. So one of the things you might do is test multiple antennas. Again, we can do the very similar thing where we can listen, we'll actually hear ourselves on the other end. So it's our judgment of how our signal sounds. We're not depending on software or anything else to do it. We're actually tuning a radio in and hearing ourselves. We can also map antenna azimuth patterns by choosing different stations around the world. We can find maximum usable frequencies to specific locations. We can compare radios, microphones, radio settings, mic gain, compression, etc., just like we did with that local ham, but now we can do it on a wider basis. If you use the VE3 SUN software, I noticed, I'm not sure when they added it, but when you do a right click now on any of the stations, it'll let you listen on the Kiwi SDR to actually hear it from another location. And this lets you go in and find that. It shows where the different locations are around the world. So that's some of the things you can do to test things out. If everything checks out okay, but you're still not making contacts, then you need to go to our next thing. And remember what that was. Our next thing beyond our station was our technique and band conditions. So those are some of the things we're going to look at in the next section. So we're going to look at operating technique, equipment issues, software issues, and I'm just going to talk about equipment issues and software issues right here. I'm not going to go into more detail later, but some of the real common things, for example, on FT8 are not having the time set properly, or having the wrong sound source set, or things along those areas. Equipment issues might be the fact that you might have your RIT turned on. So even though it seems like everything's working fine, people aren't answering you because you're not calling on their frequency. So that's what I mean by equipment issues. And then band conditions, of course, are hard to predict. So I put together an article that I presented to a couple different groups. Is called How to Make That Cue. So get in the rhythm, know the rhyme, and dance the dance. And this is especially good for new hams that are starting out, so they understand the process of making contacts, the whole thing of timing, how to tune stations in. All that information is in this. For example, this slide talks about the rhythm. In getting making a contact is a lot like merging onto a highway. You got to time things right. You got to be in the right place at the right time. Knowing your exchange for the rhyme, how to give your exchange. And then the dance talks about, here's another thing about making successful exchanges, knowing when you've made an exchange, whether they've copied you or not. So all this information is in this presentation, how to make the QSO, get in the rhythm and rhyme. So let's talk a little bit about planning for success. If you're going to be doing an operating event, whether it's at your station or portable or whatever, you can greatly increase your chances for successful contacts if you do things ahead of time, like choosing bands based on the targeted contact locations and the propagation conditions. So depends on what time of day you're going to be and what time of day it is for the other station on the other side of the targeted contact, the time of the year, the current solar weather, and the position in the solar cycle, and the operating modes you're going to use will also affect this. So what we need to do is use propagation resources, so like the solar conditions website, which gives you a very quick brief idea of what's going on solar wise and how different bands are, can be very helpful. Or the space weather site is another one that gives you a lot of good information. Or the Australian Space Weather Services site, which can give you good information. So all these can be very helpful for propagation. I have a couple other ones here. There's nothing about propagation in search of MFU ISO lines. This is a great presentation by CT1BOH. And this is my webpage, and I have a bunch of resources on propagation and spotting all on one page that you can go to. There's a bunch of them that I don't even mention in this presentation. Sometimes if you want to make a successful operation, it's helpful to notify people in advance. So having announcements, social media posts, etc., spotting on DX clusters, making sure that you're activating the reverse beacon network if you're doing CW or RIDI and other things. These are some phone apps for DX clusters that you can use on your phone when you're in the field. If you're a POTA operator, there's a whole website for POTA operations. Something very similar for SOTA also. A lot of VHFers use something called DX maps. Satellite operators use this grid map heat tool. So then the last couple things I want to talk about are portable operations and some of the factors to make sure that you have a successful portable operation. And I have another presentation that you can go to. I think it's about 115, 120 slides in that one. It's a rather long one and goes into all different aspects of portable operation. But I wanted to cover just a few things in this one directly. The first thing is I have a philosophy about when I'm going to operate portable, how to pack. My wife and I usually take vacation for field day each year, so we end up leaving here before field day and arriving at some strange location. And if I don't have everything with me, that means I'm not going to be successful making contacts at field day. So I had this idea that before I do a portable operation, I like to set up my entire portable station at my house on a table away from my shack, so it's not going to get mixed in with my regular equipment. Set everything up, and even preferably with the same antennas I'm going to use in the field, although that's not always possible. Test everything, make sure everything's working, and then pack everything before I move it again. So I know I have an operating portable station on that table on my porch, on my deck, or in my living room, or wherever I'm doing it. And when I pack everything up, I know I have all the accessories with me. I depend quite a bit on computers when I'm operating portable, so I like to make sure that I have all the resources I need with me, plus some resources that aren't really computer related, but I can easily bring with my computer. So I have my portable USB drive that I use for portable operations, and I download the following things onto it. So if I'm using logging software, which I almost always do, I have the full installation file. I have the latest update file. I have the program documentation. And don't rely on clicking on the help in the upper right hand corner, because that might take you out to a website and you might not have internet access. So I make sure I have a copy of the PDF file of the program documentation with me. As far as my radio goes, I like to make sure I have the following things on my USB drive. The latest rig driver software in case I need to reinstall it. The firmware basically is what this interfacing software for my radio. And I forgot to put it on this list, but also the latest issue of firmware, so I have to reload the firmware in my radio. Memory and utility software, and that takes care of the firmware on the KX3 or KX2 or K3. Radio operating manual is a PDF. I like having it as a PDF because I can quickly search through it in the field as opposed to having a printed paper copy with me. What I do with the paper things, though, is I like to make quick operating guides like displays of the radio and put them right in my Go box. So you notice here I have the display of all the major functions of the KX3 with all the menu commands down here, all the display information, and then some other information on operating right here, so that someone sits down that might not be that familiar with this radio, they would have this quick start guide right here in front of them. Oh, by the way, if you're interested in this Go box, I have an article you can click on to find out about my KX3 Go box. Also on the USB drive, I also, if I'm doing a contest, make sure I have the rules for the contest as a PDF. And then I also like to have any multiplier maps or lists. Like if it's field day, I want my list of all the sections and things of that nature. So I make sure I have those with me. A lot of times I'll have those both on the USB drive and a paper printout of them to set in front of me when I'm operating. And I have a lot of that information on this presentation, or this article called Amateur Radio Charts and Maps. And it's things like the ARRL charts. Again, I just have the links to it so you can get to them and print them out. Something called band plan bite size, pocket size information that you can fold up and put in your wallet. The ICOM handouts that you can get at Hamfest, but you can also print them out yourself. CQ zone map, Kenwood's frequency map, technician privileges, IARU maps, DX entities maps, the grid map of Europe, which is actually up on the wall behind me also here, the ARRL worked all states maps. I created one of my own for Canada with each of the sections for Canada, and the different prefixes is on that little chart. So when you go to that chart and you open that up, you'll get a full size thing that you can print out. It not only has each of the things on the map, but it also tells you what prefixes are there for each of the different territories. Print an azimuth map from your location. This is a program that does it online. I have a thing on the ARRL sections, as I mentioned earlier, for field day, sorted both alphabetically and by call sign district, with the abbreviations for each of the sections. And then I also, because this is field day and I use it a lot of times, I also have information here for people that don't operate very often, such as common cue signals, phonetic alphabet, etc. And you can see this is the one sorted alphabetically. Simplex frequencies for 2 meters. Some software, including the TX Atlas software I mentioned a little earlier. A whole bunch of stuff on county maps for state QSO parties, outline maps of all the states, overlay maps for N1MM logger called multi-chase. And then another one I just found recently is called Mob Rule, and it's a website designed for people that are not county hunters in the same way hams are. They actually count counties by the times they visit the counties. So it's an in-person visiting thing. But the nice thing is when you zoom in this, it'll show you all the county lines for any state you want to on this Google overlay map with all the highways. So you have to wait a few seconds for it to start showing them, but then when you zoom in, it'll start showing all the county lines again. You can see them outlined here. Actually, this is where I'm at in Summit County. Then grid square information, and then some information for band plans for Region 1, which is different in ours, so you can tell where other people might be if you're trying to find people in Region 1. So again, all that information is available at tiny.cc/charts-maps. I also make sure on that same thing I have any accessory software, like I use the WinKeyer, so I make sure I have the software to locate the COM port for that. If I'm operating FT8 or FT4, I want to make sure I use my USB GPS, so I make sure I have the software for it along with me. And then any other software that I might need, or accessories or instructions, I have all that on my portable USB drive with me. So that's the end of the presentation. I'll go ahead and stop my screen share here, and I'll take questions and answers in a few moments. But again, tiny.cc/successop, and I'll copy this link address and actually put it in the chat here.
Thank you.
You're welcome. And then again, my contact information and my website. And then also, if you're interested, I have a list of all the presentations I've done since the beginning of the pandemic. Not each of the times I've done them, but the different ones I have available, and slideshows. If there's a video that's been recorded of it, that's available. And then if there's other resources such as spreadsheets or charts, that's in this information. And as you can see, I've done quite a few. I've done over 170 presentations. Some of them are repeats, of course, but if your local club is interested in the presentation, just let me know, and I'd be happy to come out and do a presentation for you for your club remotely via Zoom. And again, the link to all my presentations I'll put in the chat also, tiny.cc/K8ZT-P. Okay. Well, hopefully I've given you enough homework to keep you busy during the holiday weekend.
I don't hear anybody. I don't see anybody. Nobody's going to play about homework. I'm thinking that I'm going to share my screen for a second.
Yeah, go right ahead.
You should be seeing.
Yes.
I sent that out with my invitations for RATPAC. When you get the invitations or the follow-ups, I send that out. That right now is showing 4 weeks ahead of what we have planned for Wednesdays and Thursdays. And again, every time you hear from me or the follow-up, you should see that. I'm included on the email. So everybody's can look at that and know where they go. I do, in a sense, want to apologize for tonight. We were in a crunch tonight. We had April 14th was taken, and then people, for whatever reason, couldn't make it and so forth, went back and forth forever. Anthony stepped up and said that he would do a presentation. As he said earlier, he's normally not available on Thursdays. This has been a great presentation. For the guys that's strictly here for disaster communications, it might not have been what you were looking for, but I think if you all look at it there, it's been very helpful for your stations and operations that you're trying to accomplish. And with that, I'll turn it back to you, Anthony.
Okay, I put the link also in the chat for the RATPAC list that'll give you the list of all of our upcoming presentations. Also, remember our website also has all this information, but again, if you go out to the RATPAC list, let me go ahead and screen share that real quick here. This will show you up through June what we have scheduled here. And as I was mentioning, on June 8th, Marty and I are going to be doing a field day prep session. So we really would like to have a large number of people. And you notice we're getting close to the 200 mark here. So we have all these 185, and after tonight, 186 recorded sessions that you can always go back through, watch the video, download the video, get any documents go along with it, and also if you'd rather watch it on YouTube, you're welcome to do it that way. I like them on YouTube because I can do the closed captioning and see the text while I'm watching it. So again, all these are available, and this list is sorted by upcoming, by date, by topic, by presenter, and by category, and you can go through any of these tabs and start that up. So I'd love to take any questions you might have about my presentation tonight or comments, and I'll go ahead and wait for those. You can either type them into chat or you can just start talking.
I think you gave everybody enough homework that you'll be getting questions afterwards.
And please feel free to use the materials to train other people with. That's one of the things. I know a lot of you that are here tonight already know all this, so I try to make sure that when I put things together that other people can reuse them. So that one on know the rhyme, learn the rhythm, and dance the dance is a great one to use with new students who are just getting started in amateur radio.
left
Well,
it.
thank you, everyone. I think I stunned people.
You gave them a lot. By the time I sent out the stuff that you have there for them to follow up on, they'll probably get a hold of you with questions. There was a lot packed into this presentation.
That was one of my shorter ones, actually. I forget how many slides it was, but it was one of my shorter ones.
You know, he ought for a Ham of the Year award or something like that. Anthony should get it. He's very
Uh,
in all different levels.
that was only 50 slides. That was a really short one for me. Well, if we don't have anything else, thank you all. 73. Have a good holiday, whether it's Passover or Easter coming up for you this weekend or whatever you might be doing.
Hey, likewise, I'm going to shut her down here. If there's no more questions or comments, are there any comments out there? Barry, you still there?
I'm here.
And you don't have a comment.
It was a great presentation. I think everybody learned a lot, and this can be applicable to everyday usage. It can also be applicable to an emergency station who wants to know to be sure that their radios are properly checked out. You can use all of these resources.
Exactly. This has been a good presentation, a very good one. Thanks again, Anthony.
Oh, you're
And
very
hello,
welcome.
Oscar.
Somebody say something about Oscar?
I said hello to Oscar. He's here.
Oh, hi, Oscar. All right, 73s, everyone. We'll catch you next go around. Have a great weekend.